Hello, everyone. My name is Hayden Meeker, and today I'm going to be presenting modern philosophers as rebellious teenagers. It's a pretty unique topic, and I'm excited to get into it. So, starting off with just kind of what modern philosophy is and just the background, I guess. I believe that modern philosophy itself can be viewed as rebellious because it starts to stray away from traditional metaphysics studies in philosophy and kind of transforms from the abstract thinking of our existence throughout the universe and this huge emphasis on the soul and these very holistic ideas to more focused and mathematically driven questions with modern philosophy that focus a lot on kind of the mind and the body more so than just the soul and the universe as this holistic being. So the rebel teens, as we're gonna call them today, can be featured here. So starting from the left, we have Rene Descartes, Francis Bacon, Immanuel Kant, and John Locke. And I chose these four for this presentation because I think all kind of have a little bit of a different upbringing, and they all, are obviously very successful in what they've done, and they're very prolific thinkers. But the way they articulate their ideas and their ideas, what they speak about, all different from each other. So I think it's a pretty unique crew here. All right, so starting with Rene Descartes. So, I kind of for this presentation was gonna I'm giving everybody just a quick little backstory of what like from based on their writing and kind of how they view their ideas. That's how I'm going to be labeling these rebellious teens. So for Descartes, I kind of pegged him as skipping class to read in the field, enjoying some cheap wine and cigarettes, either alone or with a small group of his friends. They're all going to be kind of edgy against the norm. Not really on the outside looking in because they don't really care about anything like that. Um, and I think that one quote from the second meditation of Descartes kind of speaks to how he is just kind of like a dreamer and does his own thing, and he's always looking at these big out there ideas and then kind of starting with a big thought and then breaking it down to simplify it and then breaking it down even more for our mortal brains to kind of interpret what he's saying. So the quote reads, "But how do I know there is not something else over and above all these things that I have just reviewed?" And so this is kind of where I got, on a nice sunny day in France, just him kind of laying in the fields, looking up at the sky, or whether it be at night with like the constellations. And I think a lot of his inspiration is driven from big ideas, and he is, kind of credited with starting this push towards modern philosophy. And I think that he takes a lot of influence from older philosophers and the metaphysics, these abstract thinking. And I think he kind of is a great segue into the rest of the philosophers that we're going to focus on today. But yeah, I see him as just kind of like an artsy guy, but definitely very intellectual. Doesn't really care much about what anyone thinks. All right, now moving on to Francis Bacon. Um, I'm kind of imagining him as somewhat polar opposite. And so I feel like I don't get a lot of rebellion from Francis Bacon. He seems very put together. Maybe just because he was born into Parliament, give him like um, the preppy rich kid attitude. but not really in the sense, not really super rebellious rich kid. But he's not going to be afraid of authority, and I think a lot of this comes from the fact that he graduated from Trinity College, Cambridge, when he was 14 years old, and so immediately he's of a high intellect, obsessed with knowledge, and he's credited with founding the scientific method, which is something that is still used today and is one of the biggest fundamentals of modern science. And then from his time and now and going forward, in a method that can be, with hypotheses that is, used throughout all fields, not just, when you're sitting down in the lab doing an experiment. But I think his writing is very elegant. You can tell he's extremely educated. But he's another one of these early modern philosophers that is kind of breaking down barriers and trying to push for more objective and scientific interpretations of things. And so that's kind of how I would describe him, his teenage years. So with this quote, human knowledge and human power met in one, for where the cause is not known, the effect cannot be produced. And so you can, he's relating our ability to seek knowledge and what we can do with that knowledge, and how knowledge fuels actions, and how actions can have consequences in a variety of outcomes. But this is all rooted within knowledge and the pursuit of knowing more and asking questions. So third, we have John Locke. So I thought of John Locke as it was also kind of tough to really give rebellious attribute to, but as soon as I kind of wrap my brain around this description, I think I liked it a lot. Give him the leader of the rebellious clique. He was he might be a little older than some of his friends, or he was more reckless at an earlier age than them. But it seems like he's put it in the past, and he's more mature, but he's still hanging out with these kind of running the law kind of kids. And I was trying to think of a comparison because this is kind of a unique description. But Luke Castellan, who is the son of Hermes from the fictitious book and movie Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, he is the one who's kind of a rebel amongst the group at the Camp Half-Blood. And he, even though he is a bit older than the rest of the new demigods, and this is exactly what I thought of John Locke. I mean, just kind of, doesn't really get his hands dirty as much now, but has, still hangs around the rebellious crowd. And a quote that I love from chapter 2 of his No Innate Principles in the Mind, and particularly No Innate Speculative Principles, in one of his essays, reads, "But because a man is not permitted, without censure, to follow his own thoughts in the search of truth, when they lead him ever so little out of the common road." And this was by far my favorite quote out of all four of the rebel teens here, because the word censure, meaning like disapproval, and because a man is not permitted without disapproval from others to follow his own thoughts in search of, with the real truth or his truth when it's doesn't seem to fit the norm. This is what holds people back, and I think that John Locke is definitely not this person, because he's always pursuing more, and I think that he speaks for the masses of people who, and he's kind of attesting to the fact that knowledge is, in the pursuit of knowledge and real knowledge, is going against the norm, because if we do everything in the confines of society every single day, then we will not progress as a society, as individuals, and so he has a lot of influence in this regard. All right, now finishing it off with Immanuel Kant. Um, Another tough one. It's tough to really give them rebellious attitudes, but Kant in himself, as a real person, was definitely nothing shy of a rebel. But as a kid, I see him more as knows too much for his own good. I mean, Kant's an absolute genius, and he's kind of at the tail end of this timeline that I've set up here. He's very intelligent, but I see him as someone who, in the classroom, probably just, very combative with his teachers and doesn't really want to learn about things that he's not interested in. And he's very sure of himself, and his intellect might not always be, put on the forefront because his attitude takes over, his recklessness. But he's very intelligent, and with this comes the confrontational side of Kant. When it gets to something that he's really passionate about, he's going to speak his truth. And I think this is a very good confrontational quote here when he's referring to metaphysics and in the transcendence of from the metaphysics to the mathematical and more scientific approach of modern philosophy. So he writes, if it is a science, referring to metaphysics, why is it that it cannot obtain universal and lasting recognition as other sciences do? So he's essentially confronting and calling out the authenticity of metaphysics and sort of trying to expose the jargon of the word with these abstract ideas that are filled more with questions than they are with answers. And I think that his confrontational his confrontational aspects with his mixed with his intelligence really makes him a great philosopher, because he's always asking questions, he's always calling people out, and he understands that science is truth until proven otherwise, and he's the one trying to prove it otherwise. And if anyone can do it, it's him. So yeah, that's how we wrap it up. And thank you very much for listening. I had a lot of fun with this topic, and hope everyone has a good day. Take it easy.